Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next episode of Small Business Small Talk. Thank you so much for continuing to subscribe and to share these episodes, share them with your friends, learn more about the guests that I have, which are small business owners just like you that are listening, that share their best practices and ideas and their stories of what they've accomplished and why they even decided to get in business for themselves in the first place. Because we all need a good time of collaborating with each other, at least, or even commiserating. So Small Business Small Talk gives you those moments of being able to come together as a business community to learn all of these things together. Because we like to be able to engage you, educate a little bit, but definitely entertain. So because part of our motto around here is we take what we do very seriously, but not ourselves, because we need to have a little fun in business while we're at it. So I am your host, Christy Smallwood, Chief Strategic Guide and owner of Eagle Eye Strategies, a strategy-first business based out of Louisville, Kentucky, where we break the status quo of business as usual, help you bring order to chaos, spark inspiration, and light fires of action to educate, engage, and empower business leaders all over the world. And I do want to start by giving a shout out to our sponsor partner, which is the Chamber of St. Matthews. I will say it every single time. If you're not involved in your local chamber, you need to be. And if you don't want to be involved in your chamber, come to us. We want you to be involved with us because we're a great group of business folks that love to connect, collaborate, and have fun together. So even virtually. So we have all kinds of opportunities with that as well. And I could totally get you hooked up because I'm very involved in my local chamber here. And I'm a very big advocate of that. So I would like to welcome in one of our chamber members who actually have met this guy on one of the crazy versions of connecting that we have through the chamber, which is our coffee chats. Chris Wise with Wise Law. So yes, he's an attorney, you all, that has his own business and actually networks. He gets out into the community and gets to know new people. So with that, Chris, I thank you so much for being my guest on this episode of Small Business Small Talk. Give us your backstory. So what even got you there? Like, tell us more about you and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So, I have a little bit of a different background. I did not do the traditional route where you go to college, go to law school, and then join a firm. I actually served in the military for about 6 years, got out, started to get my education at University of Louisville. And while I was doing that, I worked a lot with the Domestic Violence Intake Center here locally. From there, worked or clerked rather with the U.S. Attorney for the Western District here in Kentucky. And then an odd fate decided to take a shot at finance and ended up getting my Series 65. And I became a chief compliance officer for a private equity firm here locally in Louisville. And then after about a year, I stayed pretty close to those individuals I worked with in the past with domestic violence, and then also other attorneys in town. And I really just started to talk more with individuals who had experienced different, I guess, life events, if you will, and hearing their perspective rather than the attorney's perspective of how everything really worked. Really, I might be jumping the gun here, but one of the, first stories that ever, I don't want to say intrigued me, but really got me interested in, approaching law in the way that I do and how I started my firm, which I'm sure we'll talk about here later, but was a lady I talked with who, her and her 3 children for about 8 months lived off of popcorn because they couldn't afford rent and food and their attorney for a divorce that they were, or she was going through rather. The interesting part about that was it was actually uncontested, which as far as if anyone's ever gone through a divorce, those are typically the
The
cheaper.
least expensive. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, there's always those stories of whether people are taken advantage of. And, that kind of hit me. And, having someone live off popcorn, especially 3 little kids, just so the attorney can file some paperwork. That kind of started the wheels turning on, how are we approaching how we handle clients, just as an industry. And that's what started kind of the first thoughts of my practice, and then how I manage clients.
Okay, that is super fascinating, and it just like gave me like 50 other questions. But you're right. I want to learn more about, okay, what makes your practice different? Because I've heard little bits and pieces while we've been networking together, but explain it to me as if I'd never even heard of it.
Absolutely. So the number one difference that everyone notices off the bat is that my firm is a subscription-based firm. And so when you first hear that, most people think, oh, it's kind of like insurance, right? Like if I need you, great, but it's like $20 a month. That's actually not how it works, at least for my practice. I get contacted when there's already an issue that needs to be resolved in court, or there's going to be, we're going to start. So whether it be divorce, child custody, child welfare, could be dependency, neglect, and abuse. And what I've done, and I can kind of go down the different stories of what led me this way, but I've gotten completely rid of retainers, and also have gotten rid of hourly billing. And so how this works is I meet with my clients, we discuss kind of their needs, whether we're a good fit, kind of my approach to practice. There's some attorneys that, file endless amount of motions just to kind of do it, and it drives bills up. I'm not that guy, so if that's what people are looking for, and that's what that meeting is about, is making sure that we're a right fit for each other. If we are, then my clients choose whether they pay me weekly, biweekly, or monthly. And we set up, really, if you want to think of it this way, it's almost like a payment plan where you know exactly what you're going to pay me. We'll call it weekly. And I cap it. So you know that you'll never pay me more than that. Now, you don't have to reach it. That's not the goal. The goal is if we can finish in 2 months, and, say that ended up being $2,000 and the cap was at 5,000, well, it just stops at the 2,000. It doesn't go any higher. You don't know what the difference. It just stops there. And what I've found is this approach not only is significantly different than most firms out there that you talk with, but it's easier for families, especially when when a client of mine finds out that they're about to go through a divorce or maybe a child custody dispute. It pretty much rocks their world. This is earth shattering. They don't know, what does this mean for my kids? What does this mean for my home, my friends? What am I going to tell people? And so, from the very beginning, what I like to do is give them stability back and say, look, no surprising fees, no, bill at the end of the month where, 1 month it's 1,500, the next month it's $3,000, and then I'm asking for another 1,500. No, it's just a flat amount. And, I found that a lot of people who otherwise couldn't afford an attorney, this really opens the door for that. There's kind of a, I call it a gray zone where individuals might make more than the cutoff for legal aid. And so they couldn't really qualify for free legal aid.
Right.
But also they're not making enough to really, drop $1,500 or $3,000 today. And then again in another month when we need to, replenish the funds to finish out the case. And so this is really address that issue. And, so far it's done great. A lot of people are really open to it. I don't know another attorney who's doing it this way. I've talked to quite a few. So
Yeah, I have not heard of that payment model before, because I was curious how you differed from what I know as a subscription model like Legal Shield, where you pay the monthly like insurance, and then you call when you need it, versus you're coming in as, we have this objective before us. I'm telling you, it's going to cost about this much. So let's go ahead and set this up on and cap it again. Like You just said the magic term, capping it out. I was like, what? No, no charging me $100 for 15 minutes. What?
Right. Well, that was another thing that, that just the people I spoke with, they were so cognizant of the time. And it's kind of funny to think about, but it's also very scary, and it's a problem, especially in the legal industry, when your clients are more worried about talking with you and what's that going to cost me. And, I didn't answer the phone, but I'm still going to get billed the 15 minutes, just small things like that. And what I've done is I've focused so heavily on communication, where as long as I know that we're on the same page, you're not wondering where your case is, we both are working towards the same objective. That's a great way to put it. You know, it leads to better conclusions. The resolutions that occur, we see it coming up, and we're able to adjust and plan for it, rather than what I hear so often, which is, I haven't talked to my attorney in like a month or two. I'm not sure really what's going on. And that just always blows my mind. How can you not, how can you not talk to this person? they're something very important.
I mean, your industry, being attorneys law, is not known for great customer service. Like, that's not what y'all are known for. So I've been very interested to have this conversation. I'm so glad that you've been willing to do it on an episode for a podcast, to be able to, do like an official one-on-one this way, to go deeper into that. Cause it has been curious for me how that works. And I know I used to be a legal secretary way back in the day, like when I was really young. So I understand how all that works, and the emotion that comes with it. Your clients are already coming with a lot of just open baggage, man. It is open baggage season in that moment. And the last thing for you to be able to deal with, taking that, I'm kind of speechless. Taking the whole, don't worry about the financial stuff. Here's the plan. Now let's get to everything else that your life has just exploded with, right? Because the finances are a big issue, a big mental block a lot of times to be able to move things forward, because you feel like, well, I can't afford it. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I just heard this morning on another group call, this gentleman who is having some back issues, but does not have insurance. He's like, I guess I'll just die this way because I don't have the money to go take care of it. I'm like, there's got to be a solution for this. You can't do that. Don't do that. So good. Kudos to you for how did you come up with this? Like, what inspired you to come up with that model?
So, this is a funny story. I can't remember the exact magazine that I read it in, but I somewhere I had read that there were these attorneys that were offering subscription-based, their practice was subscription-based. And I thought, that's so interesting, because so many people I talk to, the first problem or concern they have is billing. And then the next inevitably seems to always be communication. And so I just wrote it on, I have a whiteboard. I wrote both of them on the whiteboard, circled them, and just said, all right, these are the two things I'm going to focus, all of my efforts in, and see how I can adjust it to where it actually works for my clients. And really the whole idea stems from putting your clients back to being, number one in your practice, rather than what really happens often is they become numbers. I know how this case is going to play out, and you hear it all the time with some of the other attorneys. And so I read about it in a magazine, and I thought, so cool, I'm going to call them. So I called the two firms and told them that I was a new attorney, and that, I'm really interested in, I read this article about them, and I found out that they were completely false. It wasn't that they had lied, but what they had done is they've structured it in an hourly billing type model, to where, it's subscription based, but you pay me for 2 hours of work a month. And if you want the higher subscription, then it's 4 hours a month. And it really is just
like a retainer subscription.
Right. And matter of fact, they still take retainers, but they also built it that way. Sorry. Something fell in the background there. But, it's just so fascinating that it was completely false. And so I kept saying, well, do you know someone who actually does it? Just, this is the flat fee. And quite frankly, got laughed off the phone. Since then, talked to quite a few attorneys who it's a fascinating conversation. Some think that this is the dumbest model out there, and they can only see the problems. What happens if a client calls you 6 or 7 times a week? You're doing too much for them. And I'm like, that is the point. You actually are trying to work for them. They hired you to do something. Talk to them. But there's very few so far that I've spoken with that actually like it and are fascinated by kind of the differences and what this could actually mean, which is my entire goal of changing how, specifically I work in the area of family law and child welfare law. I understand that this model won't work for every area of law out there. A good example would be like personal injury. I'm not too sure if
Right.
it would, be susceptible to this model, for obvious reasons with settlements and all of that. But as far as family law is concerned, this is a great, great model that actually addresses two of those biggest problems, which is billing and communication. And I ended up, after speaking with these two firms, um, really started to be concerned because I brought it up to a couple of friends I have that are attorneys, have been practicing for 10, 13, and 15 years. And they said, well, no one's probably done it because um, the professional rules of conduct don't allow you to. And I thought, well, that's insane. So I went digging through that and all of the code of ethics rules and here in Kentucky, the Supreme Court rules, and found that they actually, and I might get the year wrong, late 90s, early 2000s, addressed it. And there's a technical term for it. For those who are attorneys, you might know it as a non-refundable retainer fee. The modern word for it is subscription. Some might argue a marketing term for it is subscription, but ultimately, that's really what the legal industry calls it. And there's rules that go with it. And so, the contracts that I sign with my clients and I are very specific to meet those rules and regulations that the states put and the bars put in front of us. It's not any more work than what you would have to do if you were creating your own agreement. But a lot of people a lot of attorneys have not been susceptible to the idea so far. But, I find that my clients have absolutely loved it.
Well, and okay, so tactless questions here. Are you paying the bills with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so for one, you've met the budget with it. The revenue is there to meet the budget, and then two, aren't you expanding? Like you're bringing
Yeah.
on people.
Yeah, I actually got a new office. We're moving in. I am definitely one of those individuals who I start at the bottom, and I'm not afraid of starting. My office is probably the size of most people's broom closet. That's where I started, and I love it. And
Folks, I'm going to just say he ain't lying because we see him on these meetings and he literally looks like he's Harry Potter in the closet under the stairs.
It's I'm a firm believer in, my clients are paying me for the work that I'm doing, not the fancy conference room or, the nice car or whatever. So, whether that's true or not, that's just my approach to it. So I started very small and especially starting something that I used to think that I'd be able to, kind of cheat off somebody, right? Like somebody out there has done this and would be willing to talk to me. And the more and more I talked to people, no one was doing it. So I didn't really get that opportunity to cheat off people and say, does this work? Or is this pricing right? Or, so it was scary to get started. But yeah, new office, working on hiring another attorney, expanding, especially with the workload, how it is, really trying to keep expanding. The next step from here is going to be opening an office in Lexington. So right now we're just local here in Louisville, but it does work. It does pay the bills. And, it also, more importantly, has really, really done wonders with addressing some of the anxieties that my clients have.
That's fantastic. And I know that, I asked that question about paying the bills because you're now a father of two. This week, folks, right here on this podcast, this week, we now have a new addition to the Wise household.
That's right. That's why I'm not all suited up and looking like the traditional attorney there.
That's why he's not in his attorney closet.
That's right. We had a nice addition, little Everly, which is my daughter. And so I have a little boy and now a little girl, and just so happy and absolutely just in love right now.
And congratulations for that too. So yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that because it's such big news right now, like breaking news, literally 2 days ago. So congratulations to the entire family. And how's little brother taking it? Big brother taking it.
Big brother, yes, he loves it. After this, I'll have to show you some videos, but he was just so excited that we came home, and we tried, he's only 2. And so we weren't sure, how much he really understood, was it just a concept, or did he really get it together? And he just kept saying, baby Everly. And he was so happy. And, right when we walked in, he gave her a kiss and wanted to hold her. And it was just an absolute joy to see. It's so fun to see, children's reactions, right? Like they're just so priceless. And it was just an amazing experience.
Well, and I love hearing these moments with your family and the youngins, and the fact that you have such a heart for that anyway with the business that you do. Mm-hmm. Right. You mentioned part of that family law is child welfare. And I know you've never shared details, and that's part of what you don't share details. But I can only imagine, based on, TV shows I've watched that dealt with child welfare issues and some of my own background and, friends and family and situations, those are never fun times. Like you see and hear the worst of situations in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. And the dynamic difference between, you're able to, even though you see that, you still have joy in your home. So, and I think that says a lot about you and your character and how you are able to manage your own self. Does that come from some of your military training maybe? Like, how do you train that to yourself? Like, how does that work?
No, it might be a little bit different for me. I actually have firsthand experience with the foster care system. So without going, kind of down that whole story, my older sister was a part of the foster care system for years and years. She met the traditional statistics. She didn't graduate high school. She was incarcerated. There were a lot of things that happened with it. And a lot of it's based on, in my personal opinion, how the system's set up. There is just a massive opportunity to correct how we are treating really children and families that are put in these situations. I could go on and on about this for many, many hours. So I'm trying to limit myself on
I know you're trying to navigate the pathway there. I see it.
I'm like, don't, let's not go on a 4-hour child welfare talk. No one's going to listen. But, it's personal for me. For me, these aren't just numbers. These individuals, these families, these children, they matter. And, we need to find a different way to handle these cases. I know a lot of the state cases, some of the attorneys I've spoken with, quite frankly, do this just to make the little bit of money that the state pays them. And it's not that I'm not going to say that they don't take it seriously. That's not what I'm trying to say. But, I would argue that if this was one of their top paying clients, they might have taken a little bit of a different approach. And my argument is, why not just always take that approach?
Right.
And so that's really why I've structured everything the way I have, is because if we can keep the clients to a certain number where it's manageable, every single one of them should be able to have the same, service all the way through it. There shouldn't be well, this is a $1,000 client versus a $20,000 client. So, I've got to make sure I answer that call, but not this call.
Right.
And that's really what I've been fighting over the last years, getting people away from it if I can, that mentality, but then also showing like, look, this works. It is actually a better way, not only to practice, but just to be human. It's a better way just to live and help people. And really, I think most attorneys, that's what got us started, is we wanted to help people. And then from there, we found the niche or the area that led us to the avenue in which we wanted to help people, however that might be: small business, family law, personal injury attorney. But we each found that and went that route. And so I really think that that experience, especially growing up and seeing kind of what that did to my family, that kind of catapulted the area of family law. And then, of course, domestic violence, the work that I did there. And really, I didn't do anything special, but just listening and watching and talking to people and attorneys and some of the brightest minds here in Louisville, and learn more than I could have ever learned in a school setting, if you will.
Yes. And I would say that for pretty much any industry, you're going to learn a lot more on the job than just in school. So, okay. So what's been the biggest challenge that you've had to face with all of this so far?
So, really the biggest challenge so far really comes from a marketing perspective, right? And it's that subscription model. There's not really a better way to describe it. If I use the legal term for it, for the non-refundable retainer fee, that's most people are like, nope, what is that? That sounds more expensive. Wait a minute.
Right.
And then subscription was a good way for me to explain it in a quick elevator pitch. But then, of course, your reaction is the reaction that so many people have, which is this just like insurance with Legal Shield and those type of companies out there, where it's just $20, but you limit your practice and you don't really address the full scope of that area, if you will. Sometimes family law, for an example, they'll do uncontested divorces, but they won't do contested divorces. For that, you have to kind of go out of your network or however they want to term it. But really just say, no, it's family law, and this is how it works, and explain it just like I did earlier, where you really see the differences. We're already in a legal dispute. And so, let's address the things that are the first and probably the biggest concerns in the beginning, which is, finances. And then from there, explaining the difference in communications and how I've set up communicating quite differently. I haven't really gone down that path here, but most of my clients are connected with the business text line, where we text quite frequently. I actually talk with every one of my clients on a weekly basis, sometimes more than that. And the idea behind it is not to have 45, 50-minute conversations just for no reason, but to actually check in on these individuals. Some people will tell you, as a family law attorney, you're also kind of like the therapist and the guidance counselor on certain things as well. And my approach has always been, whether somebody needs 10 minutes, I have clients that are like, listen, just text me if anything changes. And, if not, just text me and let me know, we're on the same strategy that we had planned. That's perfect. I have some clients that are just really down, and a 20-30 minute conversation for me is invaluable. I'd rather have 30-minute conversations, hour conversations, 2.5-hour conversations, and know that that individual is going to be okay tonight. And, we're all on the same page, then sit here and have to tell them, well, we're at an hour right now, so I'll have to send you a bill. You know what I mean? Like that conversation just
Yeah.
is, I don't personally like it. I don't agree with it, but also it just allows, you can just see the tension drop from my client's shoulders when you tell them, how's it going? What's going on? And just have them open up. And sure, some of those issues can be addressed legally. The ones that can't, they can still be addressed, and why we can't take this to court or what this means, because it gives people, I don't want to say closure, but it gives them an understanding of, oh, okay, I thought this was a big deal that we could go to court and bring all this information up. And now I've seen that, oh,
Yeah,
that's,
no, let's not do that.
and, I mean, it's understandable, right? I mean, family law is so emotional, and rightfully so. Our children are the most important thing in the world to us. Even, without children, just a divorce, you've been with somebody for who knows how long. This is the person that you love or loved, and thought you were going to spend the rest of your life with, and then this event happens, whatever that may have been, and now you have to rethink kind of your life goal, right? Where you thought your life was going.
Yeah, it's a massive life change that you don't expect. I'm divorced. I get it. So my divorce was well over 20 years ago. So I don't look like I'm that old, but I am. And back in the day, because I had enough experience of what the basic filings were, we were non-contested. We didn't have any assets. We didn't have anything. And so I did my own divorce. Like that's as crazy as it gets. I even was able to take back my maiden name and no longer be that person. Like literally my last name was Person when it was married. So I didn't want to be a person anymore. I'm out. And so, but I remember because it took a long time, even though I was young, and you would think it doesn't matter if you're young or in your 60s, getting a divorce rocks your world and it's hard to get stabilized quickly. And it took years for me to figure out my next thing, because it was like I could never go back to what I thought my life could be like. And it did. You're right. There's so much that's happening all in that moment. And to not have to worry about the payment of it, that I know that you're here in this moment with me to just listen to what I need to get off of my chest is a huge deal, because not everybody's got the therapist or the healthy family environment or a good support system or any of that. They're just trying to get through this process of a divorce to even figure out what life needs to look like next. And it's hard. It is hard.
Right. And, sometimes I'll have clients who are afraid to even talk to friends because they don't know, where that friend lies. Are they with me or, against me? It's just the whole dynamic is truly just kind of earth shattering for that first little bit there.
Yeah.
Realize that, everything is going to be okay.
So for whatever you can share, do you have any like good success stories? Like what are some success stories that you've enjoyed?
Yeah. So I have to think there's always this, I'm trying to think of a success story where I'm not like revealing too much information where
Right. If we need to skip over this part, like for legal purposes.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a client call me and go, or an ex-client call me and go, that was me. Wait, it's like, no, hold on.
We're trying not to share names. We don't have to replace names.
No, I think some of the quick successes are taking advantage of the new law, which in 2018, Kentucky became an equal or joint custody with equal parenting time type state, where that was the presumption and is the presumption, quite frankly, and still is. And so I've been on the side where, I fight for that presumption and equal time sharing. So the mother and the father spend equal amount of time with their children, and that's gone through well. I've been on the side where I argue against it and say domestic violence is an example that does not apply, and explaining, quite frankly, that because of domestic violence, this presumption is inapplicable, and it is, quite frankly, by law. But sometimes you have to go to court to make that kind of sit well with everyone, so we're all on the same page, and that's been a success. Another was I actually have a few clients out of state, trying to make this as easy as possible. Kentucky has jurisdiction, and I'm able to get them their children back, and that's a great feeling. Quite frankly, all of the calls that I get where that weight is just lifted off their shoulder, they get their children back. Those are the best calls. I have a ex-client who was in a bit of a dispute with CPS, and that ended up resolving itself really well, and had done nothing wrong, and just needed somebody to kind of fight for them and explain the situation. So often in cases like that, you feel like you're always reacting. You're just always chasing whatever is being thrown at you, and to be able to get in front of it and help them out, and especially in a couple of these where it shouldn't have been an issue to begin with, but it is. So now getting everybody back on the same page so that families stay united. If the children do have to be removed from the household, keeping them with family if it's possible. I'm swear I'm not going to go on my child welfare rant, but
here it comes. Yeah. It's coming back around.
I know. I'm like, fight the urge. But it's very important to me, if possible, then keeping children with their family, uncles, aunts, whatever the circumstances might be, but keep them with family. We've all heard of the horror stories out there. I don't think that that's a surprise by any means to anybody, and they exist. They're real. I've seen reports that ought to have been substantiated that weren't, and there isn't a good answer for that. There's nothing I could say that will justify them not substantiating it when it should have been, and also vice versa, where you're going, what? I mean, I guess we're going to fight this, but why are we even here? And so, those calls and being able to help my clients reach that resolution that they really deserve, those are the best calls. I mean, you can never really explain how great it is when you put in so much work to get to a point where that's where it ought to have been 8 months ago. But it's taken this long, and we finally gotten here, and then it does work out that way, and it's just, you can just see, I mean, it's very emotional. Everybody's so, I'm happy. They're happy. We're all try not to cry.
And I'm hearing a lot of totally different scenarios in life, but I'm hearing a lot of similarities in the approach of honestly what I do with business owners with strategy whenever things are just very chaotic and they need somebody to help come in and clean things up because the team is not aligned with what's happening. There has to be a change of leadership somewhere. The profits are gone because somebody's stolen them. Like there's all kinds of these other, for a business owner, their business is their baby. And so whenever I'm brought in, it's usually to help figure that out. And like there's a lot of therapy in those moments. Like there's a lot of that energy that has to get given somewhere. And I'm like, just give it to me and let's work this out. There's some similarity in that. So a lot of people, us civilians who look at attorneys and are like, oh, it's an attorney, they're just do this thing. But where you're talking to me, like we don't associate an attorney with an actual business owner mindset, right? The two are ever hardly ever in the same room. That's why it's been surprising to me that you've been out networking, because like, what? I'm so happy to see you every week. But with you, and I hear what you're saying there are a lot of similarities in what you're doing with your clients, like what I do with my clients. And so, and the fact that you're very cognizant of the pricing model shows you have a good business mind with that as well. So I'm going to ask you another question. What is the best piece of advice you have received as a new business owner?
Well, it's kind of split. So I'll give you the best piece of advice as a business owner from like an attorney's perspective, and then just the best business advice because it kind of goes together. But for attorneys, you always hear, you're either in the practice of law or you're not in the business of law. There's different theories of thought there. There really is. There's many that think, it's a business, and there's many that think, no, it's a practice. This is not a business. Wherever you fall on that, the best piece of advice I received from the practice side was that I need to understand that you cannot know everything. And so while you can work and read and try to be as best prepared as possible, it's just not possible to know absolutely everything. And so there's this weird ideology out there, and attorneys do a lot, which is they'll say something like, this other attorney doesn't know the law or doesn't know what I know. And it's like, well, we could just go around the room on that one, right? We're always going to find somebody a little bit smarter. And are they smarter? Or do they just know something that you didn't know, that you could have found out? Everyone, it's just a little bit different. But it was great because when I started, it wasn't like I had 15 years of family law experience when I opened the doors. No, it was, yes, I had some domestic violence experience, some legal experience with the U.S. Attorney's Office, more on a compliance side with the other thing, but understanding that it's okay to say, I don't know, it's okay. Nothing is going to happen. If you just say, I don't know that, and I can find out, but I don't know. And that was just so priceless, because when I got started, I found that I actually got a lot of respect from other attorneys when I would bring something up that I wanted to discuss for a case. And they're like, why are we talking about this? These are how those rules work, but in the courtroom, it's going to really work like this. And then, yes, I could do the research and, argue with them, or I could say, I didn't know that, let me look into it. And then they go, oh, it's so much better that somebody says they don't know and they're going to look into it than argue with me for 3 weeks and then find out that, we're going where we thought we would. And so, that bit of advice there, you can't know everything from the practice side. The other was from a business perspective. I had the pleasure, and I will always say this, of working with someone who, quite frankly, is probably one of the smartest business people out there. He owns a private equity firm, and I had the distinct pleasure of working very closely with him and seeing his mind work. I'm telling you, thousands of books everywhere in the office, at home. I mean, just everywhere. And I was just so fascinated with kind of his approach of just always learning, which kind of goes with what I just said. Mm-hmm. But his piece of advice for me was, there's a difference between being the hardest worker in the room and the smartest worker in the room. And so, just remember that, you could put 23-hour days in for a while, but eventually that's not going to work.
It's not sustainable.
It's going down. So, his was, yes, I want you to work hard, but I want you to work smarter. So go find ways that we can improve what we thought we can never improve, because this is how we do it. This is how we do business. This is the traditional approach. It's always been done this way, and focus your efforts on destroying that mentality. And quite frankly, that's how I started my business.
I was going to say, that is exactly what you did. So that's fantastic. So knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you give others?
Probably those two. I'd probably say you can't know everything, and try to not be the hardest worker, but the smartest worker, where you find kind of I don't want to say the loopholes, but for lack of better words, you find what people just won't look at because that's not how it's done. And so, for me, I think that that's really advice that everyone can take, which is, look at it from a kind of a child's perspective, right? There's always that annoying thing that everyone will tell you where they just say, why?
And because you have one now.
Yeah. You finally get to a point where you're like, I don't know why, because dad said so, and I always, I think that's great because you get to that point and what you're really saying is, I don't know.
I just don't know.
I'm sure there's an answer out there, but I don't know it. And so that's why I say it kind of falls back on this. You can't know everything, but really look at it from a child's perspective. And I think it's so fun to see, when someone comes into any industry, any business, and they don't have a background in it, and they're kind of asking questions, and to them, they think, oh, this might be a dumb question. They kind of apologize before they ask it, and then they ask it, and then you just see like everybody's wheels start turning, and they're like, that's a really good point.
There's been moments where I did that early on, and they're like, man, I wish I would have asked that question. That's a really good question. I'm like, look, I don't, and you're right. I don't know everything. Google doesn't even know everything, even though their commercial says they do, but they don't know everything. And so there's always this, like a room full of 10 people, there's 10 different perspectives on that one topic. And so asking those good questions to learn more is hyper important, super, uber, big time important.
Absolutely. It's every industry, right? It's not just law or the legal industry or anything. It's just being able to find what you don't know. I can't remember the old saying, but something to the effect of, you don't know what you don't know. It's so true. It's so true. People are going to say this guy's talking in circles, but it's so true. And if you work towards that goal of kind of closing the gap, really that's all you'll ever do, because there's, things change, technology changes. And so, we just all have to adapt the best we can, and we'll get to where we need to go.
Yeah. And I love that, Chris. I appreciate everything that you've been saying. We're going to kind of wrap this up. So if somebody wanted to learn more about you and what you've got going on, what's the best way to find out more?
You can go to my website. It's wiselawllc.com. That's probably the quickest way, or Facebook. If you type that in, it'll pop up. But the website changes quite frequently. I've got new videos coming up. There'll be a video blog that gets started on there, where I haven't really touched on this too much, but one of my goals over the next year or two is going to be providing enough materials out there to where if an individual needed to represent themselves, they actually could. And when I say that, I mean, what paperwork do you have to file under these circumstances? What does it look like? There are all rules for this. I mean, they're not, in a $900 book. Most of it, if you spend hours and hours and hours of researching, you can eventually, if you're outside and you don't know anything about the legal industry, you could find these rules out and see how to draft these things. That's one of the big problems I find is sometimes people, like yourself, you want to represent yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to be able to say, hey, look, all these forms that the courts, kind of are scaring you with because there's fancy numbers and letters all thrown in there. Really, it's just this, and this is how it works. And that's kind of what I'm
basics. Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and the video blog is is more or less short videos where it's very particular to like, what's a petition? I just got started with a petition. Perfect. I don't need 45 minutes for that. Here, this is what it is. And I think kind of taking away the mystery that is the legal industry, sometimes it can be very scary for people. That's what I'm trying to do. And so the website's changing quite a bit and quite often. So
that's fantastic. Yeah, go check that out, everybody. wiselawllc.com. Because I'm interested. I'm like, I remember some of that stuff and I kind of know how to still read law terms, but yeah, there's still so much. I'm like, no, what, why? Yeah. So just know it, like the header, like if you just explained how to read a header of a law document, everybody would be like, oh, that's why that says what it says. Yeah, just some basics of that would be really good for people to know, especially if they've gotten hit with something, whether it be speeding ticket, like what are you supposed to do with your own speeding ticket? Like you're supposed to show up kind of thing, or somebody's randomly suing you, or even identity theft. Like there's so many different things that we're going to need to know. Some basics nowadays would be very helpful.
Right. And, the thing that you brought up, the header, is actually what started this whole thought process.
There's so much, like the header is like half a page worth of, what is this even?
That's what started it. Somebody's like, I just need to know. I had a call. Somebody's like, I just need to know what to put at the top because they keep rejecting it. And I'm like, what county? There's actually, in family court in Kentucky, there's actually, per county family court rules. It shows you. So it's not a secret, like you don't pay for those rules. It's public knowledge. And so, after talking to that individual and it happened a couple more times, I was just like, gosh, I wish there was just one place you could go to and be like, oh gosh, it's so much easier. Why didn't they just say that? That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, Chris, I support that for you. I support that big time. Fantastic. Well, everybody, I appreciate your time today. And something I would love for you guys to take away is, remember, we don't have to know everything. We can always go find out and be the smart worker in the room. I do like that piece of advice too, a lot. And Chris, I love your heart and your moral center with this. I love that the fact that you love children. So it's like you have a big heart for children. You take care of them, not only in your own household and brag about them and, you get crazy with your son kind of thing. Wait till he turns a teenager. I'm sure you've heard that 100 times by now. But that you have a great heart for community involvement, and the fact that you're thinking about the business side of law and how it affects your clients differently says to me, you're definitely an outlier in your industry. So kudos and congratulations to you. I wish big things for you coming up. Big, big, big.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast talking with you.
I've enjoyed it tremendously. I've learned a lot because all of that you talked about, I did not know until now. So, and knowing is half the battle.
That's right.
And for those of you who are our age or my age, definitely will get that last statement. So thank you so much for attending this episode of Small Business Small Talk. Join us again on the next episode for another fantastic guest spotlight in small business. Thanks, everybody.